Thank you so much, everybody, for being on time. That's on time. If you were watching this video later on, God bless you. Appreciate your support with that. If you like it on YouTube, like and subscribe, all of that kind of stuff. I'm Dr. Kari Barron, and I am a board certified doctor of natural medicine and a lover of food. I have become a lover of fasting, and through some things that I've learned recently, I have asked my sweet friend Sarah, and if you were on the call earlier before we started recording, you know, we're good friends, and um, she has been an amazing help to me. I focus mostly with my practice and I work virtually with all of my clients. I work with women that are exhausted, emotionally spent, and those that are tired of doctors not getting to the root of what's going on. And I've had a few interesting conversations lately with people, and we're finding some really great things that we can do. Sarah is one of my resources. She is my nutritional expert. She is my science geek, lover of all things science. I actually met her at a muscle response testing class. When I came in late, there was a seat next to her. I sat down and we were instant friends. We are sisters in the Lord and have such an awesome connection. Every time we're together, it's never long enough. But
No, and we
Sarah,
can't stop smiling.
I know it's just like when we get to see each other, it is just the most blessed thing. And even if we're not going through a good time in our life, we know how to support each other. And that is just one of the most less things that I think that can be done is when you aren't going, oops, I think I just muted you. No. Oh, wait, that's not right. Sorry. Okay, you unmuted. Thank you. Um, but Sarah, I'll never forget, and I will use this information every time I talk to anybody. During this muscle response testing class, they were talking about the Krebs cycle, which is an energy producing cycle at the cellular level. And Sarah leans over and she goes, the book has a red cover and it's on page three, whatever, 320 something. And I looked at her and I'm like, you know, the page of the Krebs cycle of this book. When she got home, she pulled out the book, took a picture of the cover and the page number. She knew the page number in book. So this woman actually has one of those more photographic minds. She is a functional nutritionist. She's a metabolic health expert. She knows this stuff inside and out. Over a decade of experience helping clients optimize their health through food, lifestyle, and strategic fasting. That's why she's on the call with me today. She's the creator of Nutrient Rhythm Approach, which teaches men and women how to time their meals and fasting in a way that supports hormone balance, stable energy, and thriving metabolism. She has a deep understanding of metabolic health at the cellular level, as well as overall health, and specializes in cutting through confusion, stuff that's in fashion, out of fashion, whatever, and making it simple so that you can take advantage of her knowledge base. So we're going to be working on debunking some myths. We're going to explain some key difference between fasting for men and women. We don't typically have a lot of men on the call, and so if you want to share it with your honey later on, that's awesome. But I think a lot of what's been going on for fasting and even like cold plunges has been focused on men, where women have some different dynamics that need to be addressed. So welcome, Sarah. Let me know if there's anything that, and so for all of you that are joining in on the call, please put questions in the chat so that I can get back to those when we are kind of at a point where we need to do that. And we will share contact information later on, so please don't worry about that. So Sarah, what would you like to share?
Yeah, okay, fantastic. Well, I am going to go ahead and kind of get started on this here. It's going to have me do we try to be all technical ahead of time. Like, yeah, this is going to be great. And then, there we go.
We
Okay,
got
beautiful.
distracted by friendship. That's not a bad thing.
No, it's a beautiful thing. And I will always take that. Then it's not a distraction. That is a purposeful intervention. That's what I call that. Yeah, so I'm really excited to talk to you all today about what I have deemed and called nutrient rhythm. I think we get caught up in a lot of the trends and a lot of the what's hyped today, and then it's not tomorrow, and then 10 years it comes back into cycle, and really the way that God designed our bodies was this beautiful rhythmic. And I'm a percussionist, I'm a musician, and drums are kind of my jam, along with the piano and singing and all the thing. And everything kind of flows from music with a base of rhythm. And I think that was super intentional with how the Lord designed our bodies and how he made creation. Like when he created the earth, it was all very rhythmic and everything has this beautiful rhythm to it. So why would our bodies be any different? So I wanted to incorporate that into the food piece. And before we get a little deeper, I just kind of want to bring a biblical reference back to I think why we struggle as a society with food. I think there's this tension with food all the time because people are chasing after losing weight. They're chasing after this either food addiction or they've demonized food and they restrict it. And it's become this, ugh. And I think the reason why is because when we think about how sin entered the world, it came in through the vehicle of food that was good for us. And then we just got done celebrating Easter. And so we need to remember on that last night before, Jesus was betrayed, they sat at a table at a meal with his friends and they ate food. And then he used two pieces of food in the form of wine and bread, gluten and alcohol. I think that's kind of funny to redeem
No
us of
irony there, huh?
right? To redeem us of that original sin. So I think inherently we struggle with food as part of that because we inherently are just have that. It was a reminder of the way that sin entered the world. And we have this beautiful way of being able to gather around a table. Food brings us an opportunity to fellowship. So I have this saying that I use with a lot of my clients, and it's food not only fuels the cell, but it fuels the soul. And they were meant to coincide so that when we're sitting at a table, we're not so distracted with what's on the plate, but we're really celebrating who's at the plate. And our nutrient rhythm is also kind of in conjunction with the people that we bring to the table. So that's
And,
kind
and
of
with
my
that in mind, to think about what happens when we go to heaven,
right, right. I
the
know.
marriage supper of the Lamb. Food's not a
Right.
bad thing. We're even going to have food
No.
in heaven, which I can't imagine how good that's going to be, and no dishes to clean.
Right. Right. So I think that we need to not idolize food nor demonize it. We need to accept it for the purpose that it serves, which is fueling our bodies for nutrients and how it can run and do all the things that God designed it to do. And then also for it to be a place of fellowship and community, and it fuels our soul in that way. So cell and soul, that's kind of my jam with that. So, who am I? Kari kind of touched on that. We're going to spend a whole lot of time on this. Yes, I'm a functional nutritionist, board certified holistic health practitioner, founder of Nutrient Rhythm. And then I also helped co-found the Functional Practitioner Collective. This is kind of a gathering of people that Kari is also a part of. And we collaborate over compete with one another to help ultimately serve the people, which is you guys at the other end of this, and to make us better, to help you get in our zone of genius where we can collaborate with everybody that I don't know all the things. Kari doesn't know all the things, but man, together we know a lot and it's fun.
And I love the picture you're cooking, and this is something that I know of Sarah that most people won't know. She doesn't really like to cook.
I don't. I really don't.
She
I
does.
like things together, but it's not like food is a yeah, I'm not a foodie. But I eat because I know it's important and I'm being obedient to that.
But I think it's funny that you have the picture too. I mean, you need to with a nutritionist to have a
I
picture with
know,
food,
right?
but you're
Right.
actually cooking.
And I rarely use a recipe. I am an intuitive cooker.
Me too.
I am intuitive, someone who intuitively does it.
Yeah.
So
Don't ask me for recipes.
yeah.
Well, you grab this, and this, and throw it in.
Right. I know. And then I'm like, let's see. Let's add a little love to that. Okay, what does that look like?
Yep.
Uh, okay, so what is fasting? I think it's really important to define fasting. It's got a lot of different terms out there. I am all about flipping and reframing things that feel like a negative connotation. I think fasting has become this like, ooh, restrictive. It immediately when I ask people, okay, when I say fasting, what do you think of? And they go,
Well, let's ask that
absolutely.
question.
Yeah.
What do you
Ab-
think of when it comes to fasting? I'd love for you to put that in the chat. I
Yes.
like the interaction because it tells
Oh,
us
good.
if we're going the right direction or not. So anybody that wants to chime in on what fasting is, and
Put in
I'm
there.
going to share too, because there are different ways to fast and different reasons to fast. And
Correct.
I mean, this could be a couple of days long webinar. We're going to have to keep it to
No,
an hour.
we
But
are.
if you want
It's
to put
hard.
anything in the chat as far as your thoughts on fasting, please do.
Yeah. So what is fasting? When I say fasting, what's the first thing that y'all think of? I get lots of varying answers on that. I like to reframe it as time specific eating. Time specific eating. So let's see, we've got fasting body reset. Yes, Rose. To me, fasting means skipping a meal or two, possibly not eating all day. Yeah, that's right, Vicki. I mean, those are both correct answers. I love the body reset one. That's great. So fasting is the intentional refrain from food. Yes, correct. You're skipping, you're not eating actual food or calories to some caloric beverages for a specific period of time. And so that gives the body a break from digestion. So we like to think of fasting as kind of like the rest and digest phase. And it shifts into that repair, detox, fat burning, metabolic efficiency is what we can call it. One thing too that I think is important is when we think about how our body repairs, you guys all fast every single day for at least 6 hours if you're sleeping, 7 hours. So fasting isn't just the time that you're awake. Fasting is occurring when there is no caloric consumption in that time frame. So,
At least
um,
that's how we're going to go about it today.
well,
We're not
yes.
going to talk about juice fasting or any other type of fasting. We're going to be talking about the non-food, no calorie intake. So
Right.
not
And there
juice,
are
not anything else that way.
Yeah, there are a lot of different ways to go about it. And I mean, I love fast mimicking. I think fast mimicking is super helpful and can be really important. But this particular type, when we really talk about what a fast is, especially from a biblical perspective too, there was an absence of food. So when we think about time specific eating, basically, we're taking all of your calories and shoving it in a specific eating window. So you're not necessarily um, being restrictive from a caloric perspective. We're being strategic with those calories. So there's a couple of ways that you can look about it. You've got 12-12 is a common one where you're 12 hours eating and 12 hours fasting. So how do we count? Does anybody know how you count like the hours fasting from meal to meal? Usually when we're taking those longer hours.
What I have done is I would do from dinner until I eat the next day, typically, because
Yes.
the dinner is the time that I spend with my husband and eating. And so that communion, commonality is an important aspect, but you can, do it however works for your system and your time
Correct.
schedule.
Right. And it's usually what you pointed out was usually last meal to first meal is then the time in between is your fasting window. Now, if we're flipping that, the time from the first meal to your last meal, that's your time specific eating window. So really from a mindset, I love mindset work because I think it's really important how we reframe and how we approach things like this when we are understanding our body conversation. Time specific eating, if you want to think of, okay, this is my eating window, this is the time that I'm going to nourish my body and replenish my body is during this window, and then I'm going to reset and help it repair during the non-eating window. So we are getting our nourishment and our caloric consumption during, again, strategic. It's strategic. We're strategically eating during our calories during this time. 16-8 is really popular, and that's kind of what everyone goes to is a 16-8. Oh, well, 16 hours fast and I have 8 hours of eating. And then we can go even further where you've got the 14-10, the 18-6. So you get it. The first number is your hours fasting. The second number is your eating window. And then there's one called OMAD, 1 meal a day. All of these are great options. And guess what? Because we live in this rhythmic sense of variation, creating the adaptation. That's another one of my favorite phrases. You can actually fluctuate between these on a regular basis. It doesn't have to be, oh, I'm fasting, I have to do 16-8. And this is where I think from a female perspective, we get logged into because all of the fasting research and studies have been done on men. So of course, 16, they only have a couple of hormones to worry about. We got all these other ones that impact things. So
And as we age, they impact all the more because
right.
of the adrenals, which I'm sure you will be discussing.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So when we think about specific rhythm, we're really talking about our circadian rhythm. And then that's what supports the hormone health, your digestion, stabilizing blood sugar, all these great things. And then we pick up on those cues during how we are addressing sleep and hydration and things like that. I gain weight if I don't at least do 16 hours of fasting. Oh, Rose, we're going to talk about that, of what that actually means. So I want you to just kind of think about it's not about eating less, but eating within a set time frame. And then your body thrives on that rhythm, not randomness. There's nothing random. We don't, as believers, we're not really believers of random activity. Everything has a purpose and a specific
Order.
alignment
Yeah.
and order. Yeah. So the rhythm is really, that's why I love like this thing. I don't know, maybe it's because I'm a musician, but I love that there's a rhythmic piece to this too. And we can be very intentional. So intentionality comes into play as well.
And that's when your body's in harmony.
Yes, and see, like, oh, it's like this beautiful symphony. And he's the ultimate conductor. I mean, we could go on all kinds
Yeah,
of fun little tangents there.
absolutely.
Okay. Fasting mistakes women make. Oh, that one, I guess I didn't put the I didn't do that correct, but that's okay.
Oh, oh,
So
good. You're
fasting,
forgiven.
thank you. I am. So fasting through stress or exhaustion. I want to touch on this one. So most women ignore their stress signals. Who can give me some ideas of what a stress signal might be in your body as the way that it shows up in your body? What would be a good stress? What would be a stress signal?
Go ahead and put those in there, and then Sarah can talk through some of
Definitely.
the other aspects of stress.
So stress is not just emotional. Everybody thinks stress is emotional. Stress is also physical and chemical, and our bodies don't really understand where it originates. It just knows that it's in distress. So how it shows up is through sleep, um, fatigue, anxiety. Let's see, we've got bad sleep, anger, frustration, sweating. Yeah, y'all have been working with Kari. Headaches, fatigue, heart rate increase, tremors. Those are all really good signs that your body is in distress. That anxiety and fatigue and poor sleep, hormonal distress, gaining weight is a sign of the body being under stress. So they fast anyway, and it pushes their adrenals and it wrecks hormone balance. Another
I want to touch on that real quick, just because I think it's an important aspect that I think we under discuss. And every one of my clients has had adrenal issues. There's
oh
not one
yes,
person that doesn't. We will, as women, push ourselves through and work as hard as we need to, we think need to, and we will not even perceive our stress. So when I talk to people, oh, I don't have stress, and we check their cortisol levels and they're out of whack completely.
right.
And as we age, our hormone producing organs of our body, our breasts, our uterus, the fallopian tubes, like all of those things, push all of that off onto the adrenals.
Oh,
So
yep.
as you're aging and you're getting to my age, where post-menopausal, I stopped that a few years ago, and now it's the adrenals doing everything. If you are still having adrenal issues, you've got to fix those before you start
Yep.
and pay attention to them. It's not like they have to be 100% fixed, but you're not going to have success with fasting if your adrenals are totally messed up.
Absolutely. And when kind of touching on the hormone, like estrogen is stored in fat cells too. So if your adrenals aren't properly working and you jump into a fasting state, so Rose, this might be why you have a weight gain piece because your body still needs to create estrogen and it still is trying to, not at the amount that you did at one point, but your fat actually is kind of where that happens. And so it stores
You're
there.
right.
And And it's right. And then it's your adrenal. So your adrenals are taxed. So where does it go? It has to go somewhere because there's an order to things. So then it goes to the backup system. The backup system is like, oh, I'm going to hold on to fat because we've increased cortisol, and we've increased cortisol, which then there's an insulin response, and then we've created this whole other host of an issue. So not really sure what happened
Go
there.
to the right. Oh, you got it. There you go.
So why it's important to understand, like, fat gain or gaining weight can actually also be a sign of a stress signal. It's not that we as a diet culture have flipped that and said, "Oh, I'm gaining weight, therefore I must do these things to decrease the weight." Weight is a protective mechanism. And if the body doesn't feel safe, it will not release the weight. So if you start to gain weight outside of these fasting windows, or as you start to increase fasting, then you actually are taxing the adrenals, causing an adrenal stress, causing that cortisol to rise, which then pairs in with the insulin response, and boom, those two things together create a fat retention. And your body does not feel safe, so then it won't release the
Yeah.
weight.
Well, and if it does release, it's going to come right back on once you're
Correct.
done. And that's what I had recently. I did a program that I'd done years ago, great success with it, kept the weight off for a long time, got down to my ideal weight, and sure enough, started regaining that weight, and I'm almost back to where I was before
Mhm. Right.
because I hadn't fixed my adrenals. I thought I was good. I was not. So
Right. Adrenals are huge.
I have to be honest with you guys. I don't get it right all the time either.
I know, and I'm kind of in the middle of this adrenal crash myself with all the things, just because we aren't, and we do this as women. Oh, I'm not stressed. I'm good. I pray, I meditate, I
It's a
do the
lie. It's a lie.
it, we are, your body has a physical response to stress. It has a response to chemical stress, and it has a response to emotional stress. It
Mhm.
goes into danger mode and protection mode and tries to protect you. I mean, this is how cool God designed the body.
Mhm.
So he said, I'm going to build in this built-in mechanism, and it's called fat storage to be able to protect you, even though then on the other side of it, it becomes a problem if it's hangs on too long. So I think we get caught in this rhythm of not understanding those signals that our body is trying to tell us. So another common thing that I have seen is women skipping the feasting phase. There's an important time frame. You have to feel fuel well in order to fast well. So if you aren't nourishing your body, and remember, it goes in this rhythm. So if you're not nourishing your body, where is it going to pull all of the stored nutrients from? Where is it going to reset? It's going to go into, again, protective mechanism. So if you skip the feast phase, which can be multiple times, like we don't that's a phrase that I'd like for you to start to explore, is I need to pause and feast. We need to feast at the table. We need to, and not gorge and not gluttony, but nourishment, a nourishing feast to replenish and nourish the cells. So then when we go into a state of reset, it's able to properly process, and it's able to utilize in that rest and digest phase. Women undereat. They just do. They undereat protein and carbs on non-fasting days because they think, oh, I'm good. Less is more, less is more, less is more. But then that leads to muscle loss,
Yeah.
thyroid down.
And it causes extra adrenal strain too, because
Right.
you've
Hormone crash.
got, I mean, it's God's got all these fail safes. We keep trying to push them away and ignore them. And it's like his design is beautiful. We just got to tap into it, like Sarah's talking about. So please
Fasting is
listen.
not a diet. And that's the thing too. I think that this culture has shifted it to be believing that it's a diet, not a rhythm. It's it is a rhythm, and it's not a diet. It is a lifestyle. It is a beautiful thing that if when you start to learn and really listen and be in tune to how your body shows up and talks to you, you can use it, and it becomes this part of how you approach food at the table and food for yourself. So it's not a diet. It's not a surefire, oh, I need to start fasting because I need to lose weight. Then you're chasing something that isn't appropriate. We need to go back to, okay, what's the rhythm of my body? What is it? Are my adrenals off? Or is my sleep off? Am I pooping okay? Because we all love talking about poop and how it's such a great thing to be able to eliminate those toxins that are holding on in our system. If we're not pooping, if you're under stress, if you don't have much movement, all of those things come into play. We need to also remember that fasting's it's a metabolic tool. It's not restriction. It's not punishment. When you use it without variation, so remember I said variation creates adaptation. What that means is if you do something over and over and over and over and over again, it becomes a stressor rather than the body having to adjust and go in and out of this rhythm. That's why a rhythm is just the perfect example of this.
And something that if you guys want to do a little more research on it, the term is actually hormesis.
Mm-hmm.
And
Sure,
that
how
it's
much to
like throwing your body out of whack a little bit so that it learns to compensate. Um, I, I don't want to mess you up because we have an hour. So we'll
you know.
probably need to have you back on if we don't get through a lot of things here, but
Right.
got some
How
great things to
can
discuss.
Totally. How to begin safely. This is the part where a lot of times there's a little bit of a mess up too, unintentionally. I think you hear about it and you're like, oh, I'm going to do that. I'm going to go a 24-hour fast.
Oh,
Yes.
my first fast, I was going to do 72 hours.
I've seen that. And then you start to pay for that on the other end.
Oh, it was not a happy thing, people.
Uh-uh.
You need to train your body how to be without food.
Yes, because you also then what happens from a systemic perspective. So think of all these beautiful organs. We've got these systems that work together. So I love to call, and Kari knows this, I love to call the three main organs that play a really great role in how we detoxify and how our body kind of tell us how our body is doing is the gallbladder, the liver, and the intestines. Though, and yes, the kidney is important, all that, but these three I call them the middle school girls. And the reason why they're the middle school girls is because they can be the mean girls at times. Because if they're not talking together and they're not working cohesively, the whole school knows it. And I'm pretty sure every one of us here can relate to the middle school mean girl. So we need the gallbladder, the liver, the intestines to actually start to work together and be in harmony with one another so that they can help you in this process of training your body. So if you start to go after and you do a 72-hour fast like Kari did, your liver is going to be thrown off and it's going to dump all this glycogen because it holds all of the stored glucose in your system, going to dump it super fast. And then you're going to have this like keto flu. And then your gallbladder is going to be like, what's happening? What's going on? And then your intestines are like, dude, we are not happy. We got to get this stuff out. I mean, it's just wreaks havoc. So the best way to begin safely is to start with a 12-12 fast. So super easy to hit. Super easy to hit. Say you stop eating dinner at 7 o'clock, then 12 hours later, that's your first meal, 7 a.m. Perfect. Easy. Like I said, fasting just doesn't take place when you're awake. The good portion of it takes place when you're asleep. And I think God designed it that way too, because when we go to sleep, that's when all of this great remineralization happens, our bones repair, our tissues repair, our digestive system goes through this whole process. We get phase 2 and 3 detoxification. I mean, a whole lot happens while you're unconscious, which is kind of cool. But when you think
When
about
you
it,
should be unconscious.
when you should be unconscious, yes. If you're awake, not, and that's one of the triggers. If you're not sleeping, not the time to start going into a long fast. So start with the 12-12. A
And
way to,
and for some people that are breakfast skippers on a regular
yeah,
basis, when I work with my clients, I get them on a regular rhythm of
good.
3 meals a day to make sure that we get that adrenal system
Yes,
in balance
yep,
before we start doing any of this intermittent fasting. 12 to 12
correct.
is a normal, like I think
Yep,
God-given design
God-given
for us
fast.
to fast that way.
Right. But some people go and they'll like, oh, my blood sugar is crashing, or I have, hypoglycemia. So then they have a snack or they're snacking before bed. They're having meals before bed. Well, then you're not going to get your 12-12 fast in. So the best way to start that is just closing your kitchen right after dinner and saying, and then you're waiting before you're eating 12 hours again.
And brush
This
your teeth right after you eat.
this is a
Because then
great
you're not going to want to brush them again after you
group.
eat a snack. That's how I cut out evening snacking. Right after dinner, I will go brush my teeth, and my husband's like, "It's not even bedtime." I said, "I don't want to eat again and have to brush my teeth again."
That's right. Whatever mechanisms you
Yeah,
need to put in place, do it.
yeah.
Um, because it's you know you best at that point. So the best way to go about the 12-12, closing your kitchen after dinner, but this is really a great way to also like to check that to get your adrenals in check before you go into longer fasts. So your body will be hungry by the time you wake up in the morning. And you do start with a good protein dense meal at the within an hour of waking. And that's how we can kind of get on this rhythm to then go into those longer fasts. So this is super, super important is learning and training your body how to go without food the appropriate way. You want to make sure you're prioritizing mineral rich hydration. I'm sure you guys have talked a lot about water and minerals and how that plays a role. Minerals are the catalyst, the jump start, the spark plug to every single cellular reaction. And we have to input them. So I know Carrie's got some, like silica. We love talking about silica and magnesium and potassium and calcium. And I mean, not telling you to go supplement all these things, but just getting it in that morning hydration. So going back to the starting and understanding how to reset the adrenals. I have a little adrenal cocktail that I have most people start on. And that first thing, the first hydration in the morning is going to be, and you can make it pretty cheap, a good Celtic sea salt or a good mineral salt. Um, cream of tartar. Cream of tartar is potassium. So it's a 2-to-1 ratio. So like a quarter of a teaspoon start with a quarter teaspoon of cream of tartar, and then a fourth of a teaspoon of your favorite mineral salt, Celtic sea salt, Himalayan salt, Baja Gold, whatever salt you guys talk about.
I like Redmond real salt because it's
Redmond, I love
the
Redmonds. I use
minerals for the continent of the North American continent. So that's my
perfect.
favorite to use.
Mine too. I like that one and the Baja salt. So quarter of a teaspoon of the salt, half of a teaspoon. So it's a 2-to-1. Or you can start off with an eighth of a teaspoon of the salt and a quarter of a teaspoon of cream of tartar, 2 tablespoons of a good organic orange juice, juice of a half a lemon, and then 6 to 8 ounces of purified water. Great way to start the day. Helps with digestion, helps release enzymes, it gets everything moving, and it helps with that adrenal reset as well. So then after that, you would have your mineral rich, that's your mineral rich hydration. And then that's kind of jumping into the electrolytes and apple cider vinegar in the morning, like that kind of thing. That follows that. My bullet points are off. And then eating enough protein and healthy fat when you do eat. Especially as you age, we need to make sure that we are having fat and protein. We don't need to demonize that either. Like I think that's kind of been, um, you know, if you guys any of you grew up in the 80s and 90s and you had snack wells, those are super um, underutilized. And so fat gets underutilized a lot. And then we don't just want to delay eating. So this is that safety thing. So by skipping that first breakfast, like we don't want to just delay it. You want to build it and nourish your hormones to help you stay fuller longer. So that's where by starting your day with protein and fat, if you can get 30 to 40 grams of protein per meal. But really, if you're really just starting out, that first meal is super important. So doing that and pairing it with a fat, that first meal should not be a whole lot of carbohydrates. We want those carbohydrates later in the day. The first meal should be fat and protein. So minerals, mineral rich hydration, eating enough protein and starting off with protein. And then as you start to move into like I would do a 12-12 fast like religiously, like going after that, making sure you're eating those 3 meals a day, like Carrie said, and starting there. And then do that for a week. And then you can start to either stop dinner earlier or push your breakfast out a little bit later. But really, that's going to be dependent upon that adrenal check.
Yeah, and that's something that with my clients, we look at that as getting those adrenals into a good rhythm. And that doesn't happen fast for most people because honestly, nobody really wants to make those changes and they think they're going to gain weight if they're eating
Oh,
first thing. So
yeah.
compliance is always an issue. Everybody,
Yes.
nobody really wants to make some of those changes that they need to. So we want to have that going for a little while and
Yes.
then we move into it. And for some of you, you're like, I want something that tastes good in the morning that's sweet. And you know, I'm not a big orange juice fan, to be honest, because there's such horrible orange juice out there. I actually have a tangelo tree in my backyard. I've got grapefruit and lemons. I get fresh off the tree, but
Yep.
most of the stuff you find at the store is junk. So I'm not a big fan of orange juice, but what I do is very similar. I haven't done the cream of tartar, but I'm going to be doing that next time. But I have a smoothie recipe where I do a handful of spinach, a little bit of berries, and good fat protein. It could be nuts or seeds, something like that in the soup smoothie. I tend to not blend the smoothie with the nuts. I leave them chunky so that when I'm eating my smoothie, I have to chew. And when
Mm-hmm.
you're chewing, that is getting those digestive juices going so that that protein is actually utilized instead of just running through you because it's a little too much.
Yes.
I'm going to put it in the replay too, just
Yep.
so you guys have that recipe.
Yes. And I mean, sometimes realistically, we don't have like good access to, like, I live in a food desert and I don't have access to like really great oranges or grapefruit, or I miss Phoenix. Oh, I miss Arizona.
Phoenix
Lemons,
misses you too.
that kind of thing. So there is a like Uncle Matt's organic orange juice is probably the better one that's out there. It's basically just pressed orange juice in there. That's the one that I wouldn't go be getting some like Tang or like Simply OJ or anything like that. But even taking just the juice of an orange, if you can get a good orange from the produce section and just juice an orange, the key is that vitamin C to help stimulate the digestive juices like she was talking about.
And two, I don't, it's funny when I do my smoothies and I'm using citrus, I take off the peel, most of it, but I'll leave a little of the peel on and you get all that white pith. There's so much vitamin C in that pith. So my husband can attest to this. When I do grapefruit in a smoothie, I throw the whole grapefruit in there, not the peel. But we had limes, we were throwing the whole lime in there when we had a lime tree that was still living.
Yeah.
Because that outside peel, there's so many amazing nutrients in that too. But not starting with the donut, not starting your day with coffee, please.
Right. No, no, no.
Thank you.
If you're going to drink coffee, drink the adrenal component first. Drink the cocktail, I call it a morning elixir because that's just fun. Having a morning elixir. I'm having my morning elixir. And then anytime someone says it back to me, I'm like, oh, that's kind of fun. So I think fasting for hormones, we're going to switch to this because I get this question all the time. And this is a huge mistake that women make, just jumping into the fasting. If you are in that perimenopause and menopause state, you really want to watch for stress load, sleep quality, and adrenal signs. Adrenal signals are going to be like fatigue that doesn't improve with sleep. That's like probably the number one. So if you're waking up
That's the
tired,
neon flashing light.
yes, buzz. If you're waking up tired after 8 or 9 hours of rest, most likely it's your adrenals. If you're like wired but tired, no, tired but wired, that's what it is, tired but wired. And you feel more energized at night and then you crash mid-afternoon, adrenal dysfunction. You rely on caffeine or sugar to get throughout the day, adrenal dysfunction. If you have trouble falling asleep, especially if your mind is going, 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 or you wake up between 2 and 4 a.m. consistently, that's the classic cortisol spike window.
Right. And it'll be when you don't have enough carbs to make it through the night.
Yep.
That's when the adrenals kick in and you're going to get hot and sweaty and think that the house is on fire. And
Correct.
that's your adrenals saying,
Your adrenals.
you got to be nicer to me.
Mood shifts, motivation shifts. If you're anxiety or feeling really overwhelmed or you have like low motivation, that's a huge sign that your adrenals are a little bit out of control. And then of course, blood sugar regulation. That's like that, not like if you're waking up in the middle of the night, where you get that kind of dump, like glycogen dump, crashing between meals. Or this is a good one. This is a really good indicator. Strong cravings for salt, for sugar, for caffeine. Oh, I'm just munchy. I really want something sweet. So that I want something sweet in the morning, adrenals probably shouldn't go into a lot of fasting at that point. Let's reset that first, and then we can move into that safely. So when if your cycles are still regular and or you're in this perimenopause and your cycles are kind of like wonky, but you know you're ovulating, you want to pause fasting during ovulation, high stress seasons, poor sleep nights, and the under eating and over exercising. If you're doing that, that's when we kind of put a pause or put a pin in the fasting.
So we're
We
going to
want,
call that a 12-hour fasting during that time because that to me is normal body rhythm. So when you're going through those types of things, that's a 12-12.
yes, yes, good point. And if your cycles are off, a really like God put this built-in clock and this built-in rhythm in the moon cycle. So when you have the new moon, if you're not, most of you that are in menopause or even a perimenopause, or if you are actively cycling and are in that fertility stage window, but your cycles are all over the place, use the new moon as day one of your cycle, like as a starting point to kind of get into as a phase of starting to watch this. And what I mean by that is it'll make sense on the next slide. So I used I trained with Dr. Mindy Pels, and we did the Fast Like a Girl framework. I've adapted a little bit of it because I don't agree with all of the things as how she like with food wise, but the principle of the timing is what's really important. So days 1 through 10, that's when you want that's when you're actually menstruating. And if you're not menstruating and you want to mimic a menstruation cycle, that's when you pull in the new moon. So new moon days 1 through 10 would be like if you were to pretend you had a period again, you would follow these parameters.
And
So
I want to say something real quick and not to be like, I think you guys are idiots, but new moon is when there's no moon. So it's a terminology that some people are unaware of. I'd rather just clarify that.
good point. I struggled with that for a really long time too, and I forgot that. Full moon, like when moon is super bright, and then the next day when there's no moon, that's when it's actually the beginning of the moon cycle again. So it's kind of like as your cycle phases, it's the shedding of your uterine. It's like there's nothing, it's getting rid of it. So there's no moon in the sky. That's kind of the same thing of what would be happening if you were to have a cycle. And then it fills back up and it comes a full moon and then we shed it again. So
A good memory tool.
yes, it's a great way to be able to kind of give a visual. So we don't want to get in the weeds in this. This is just a snapshot. Again, this is going to fluctuate for every single person, but this is a general parameter. During days 1 through 10 is kind of when you have that, fasting is okay. You can, if you've been training and you know that you've got some good, strong adrenals and you're ready to go into those longer fasts, you can go into the fasting cycles, doing 24 hours once a week. 16-8 would be fine, but this is where you're having your higher protein, your lower carb, your moderate fat. During 11 to 20, that's typically when ovulation happens. If you were to be ovulating, even if you're not ovulating, we still have this rhythmic cycle that goes and flows in our body. So that's when we go to the hormone feasting. This is when we nourish well, right? This is when we're going and we're actively nourishing. So, 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight or goal weight. Like again, I hate these things because it's like I'm such an individualized practitioner where I do that. So please take this with a grain of Celtic sea salt, where your protein is higher, your net carbs are a little bit higher when you've got higher fiber and you're doing more of a higher caloric component. And this is when we drop back in minimal fasting. So like no more than 14, 13, 14 hours. And days 21 to 28, so the week before your cycle, absolutely do not do any fasting during that time frame. Like 12-12 that's what gentle fasting would
Can you
be.
do a quick definition of carb for you? Because
Yes,
everybody has a different
I
idea of
know.
what carb means, and people will grab on to what their
I know.
thoughts of carb are when
So
that's
true.
not necessarily what you are discussing.
So true. I think when I think of carbohydrates, I think of the carbs like nature's carbs, like the things that God made that are not a protein source like beans or meat or fish. So your green leafies are going to be carbohydrates. Your vegetables are carbs. Your potatoes, like this is the time in nature's carbs, the higher nature's carbs. This is the time to eat the potatoes. This is the time to do the starchy tubers. This is the time to do more of those robust, thicker vegetables. Your green leafies are going to be lower carb. And we can do like rice and I'm not a big
Do
processed
you
food.
realize the face you just made?
I know.
So like me, okay, so
It's a
with my clients, I ask
so
them,
great
give
for
me
you.
a time without grains, beans, and rice.
Okay, great.
Because and these are not all my clients, some of them have never met with me, but I have found, and this is more where Sarah and I are so aligned with when it comes to carbs, veggies and fruit, don't go high on fruit all the time. I know some people are like, well, I'm just having carbs that are natural. I'm like, yeah, a whole bunch of mango every day, that's a lot of sugar. But when
Right.
it comes to grains, beans, and rice, they are not what God created them to be anymore. You have so many pesticides, herbicides, fungicides, and if they don't have the fungicide, they're growing mold. So
Yeah.
when my clients eliminate those for a period of time, we see their toxin loads go down and their
Right.
health go up. So I'm not a fan of those kind of carbs. I'm not saying never ever have them because I had rice the other day at an Indian restaurant. I'm
Right.
not going to eat a whole bunch of, like, I'm not going to have rice and potatoes and pasta. I don't even know the last time, except for zoodles. You know what I mean? Like, there's different dynamics. So please kind of keep that in mind when it comes to the higher carb kind of content. I love sweet potatoes, beets. Quinoa has a lot of great protein in it, as well as those slower burning carbs. So that's a nighttime kind of thing to have those slower burning carbs at night. So your body has the energy to get up in the morning and you aren't
Right.
waking up because your body's like, I need that blood sugar, and so you don't have that blood sugar, so the adrenals kick in and it wires you. So
Yes.
this,
Yes.
I love that you've gone with what Mindy has put together and made it a lot more simplistic because hers was very complicated.
It is. It is complicated. Well, and again, going back to I
Great
think that
information, but complicated, and I like simple.
right. And simplifying, like we don't need to complicate things really. Like the simplicity of reset is so beautiful when the stress, the stress of the overwhelm of am I doing it right? Am I look, progress over perfection. Last time I checked, none of us died on a cross, so we don't get to claim perfection. So I always put that in the mindset too. But with a carbohydrate, if God made it, you should be able to eat it freely. The grains and the carb, if man altered it, that's where we need to be really cautious. So man altered, beans and rice and grains and things like that. Not to say that they're not okay. And this is where like when we can go a little bit deeper would be like another level of a rhythm. So this would be like more of a, if you have musicians on here, more of a concerto versus a simple piano piece. When we dig into that nutrient rhythm part of being able to pause on certain components because the word eliminate I think just brings on all this negative, just like fasting brings a lot of like tension to the body. So if we can say, hey, we're going to pause on this for a little bit, we're going to identify what the body says and says, hey, you know what, I really kind of feel really good, or I'm going to love the foods that love me back. And that's a really great like beautiful gift to give yourself, is to release the expectation of this is what I'm supposed to do versus really sitting and hearing how God has designed your body to respond to the elements that he gave us. And then like let's say we pause on grains and beans and pastas and right, again, man altered pasta. God did, we didn't create a pasta tree. Now rice fields, yes, but because man altered it with pesticides, that
But
becomes a little bit,
zucchini squash is kind of
yeah, it's
it's
kind of
kind of a pasta, but it's
a pasta.
natural.
Sure. So that's where like the process, I'm really like processed carbs. I don't really, I think for the
Yeah.
purposes of this in a reset, then when you want to kind of bring some of those things back in, you really sit in tune with what does my body say? Does it like it? Does it not? So when you're cycling, it becomes, if you're actively cycling, this is really important. If you're still in that perimenopause or menopausal phase, you can still follow this, but you get a little bit more freedom, which that's a whole, we could do one just on.
But that's why you want to work with a practitioner if you're struggling
Yes.
with your food. That and
Yes.
Sarah, I bring on other practitioners all the time. They are my resource. I am their resource. Sarah has
Yes.
asked me questions about things that I am more knowledgeable about. I would love to be in her brain sometime, but I think I would get lost because there's so much information in there that I would just be like, oh my gosh. But working with a natural practitioner that wants to figure out your situation. I have a client that recently came to, well, recently, 6, 7 months ago, came to me after working with other practitioners for a while. And they had her eating like 10 carrots a day and never checked her hormones to did any detox, any of those kind of things. And we need to be, as practitioners, so knowledgeable about what your body is doing and what the options that are best for you. Please don't think that going this alone is something that's easy. There are
It's not
easy steps to take, but you're going to have greater success with less pain when you're working with the practitioner. So that's why, for some clients, I think that's probably Eliana. She didn't like me when I first tested her sensitivities to certain foods because those were the foods she ate all the time. And she's
right.
like, what am I going to eat? And it's like, well, if you've got a sensitivity to the foods you're eating all the time, then your gut is not happy. All of those intestinal permeability issues are awry. So sometimes you have to eliminate the things that you eat all the time because your body's already struggling with that. And we
Correct.
have the variability. And that's, I think, the beauty of eating like this
Yes.
is that you have options to be more adventurous with food, to try new things. You
Right.
know, I fell in love, it sounds so weird, with spinach in soup.
Mm-hmm.
I did a thing where I was like, I'm like cutting the spinach up, putting it in there with a ton of green onions and just some beef in broth. It was
Mm-hmm.
amazing. But that was more for like a breakfast meal because the amount of carbs would be too much. And people are
Right.
like, beef soup for breakfast? That's insane. But have an adventure with it.
Right.
That's one of the beauties of how many things of produce the Lord has blessed us with.
Absolutely. And another thing that I love to do too is to get that very, it's not like you're going to go and pick up 30 different types of produce and eat all 30, like we should, but a really great way to do that is and I would love to challenge people to like try this, to get this, to even get just a little bit of variation in your produce in. Go to a farmer's market, go to your grocery store, or go to the market and pick up like vegetables that you've never seen, just a couple of them, and put them in a food processor, put them in a blender, mash them all together, saute it a little bit with some olive oil to kind of break up the enzymes, then freeze it in a muffin tin, and you have these little pucks. Then you can add those 1 to 2 pucks to a smoothie every morning, or a put it into a soup, add it into a sauce, and that way you're getting. I call it my microbiome mash. And that way you're getting all of this variation of all these beautiful carbs and and carbs from a nature's carbs, from a God's carb, of being able to get that variation in without having to gnaw on and chew. And, like I'm a big fan of chewing, so I'm not saying that, but gnawing on like 30 different types of vegetables over the course of 5 days, like that's kind of unrealistic with
Yeah.
the way that things are. So by doing a microbiome
And
mash,
and spices too.
and
And
oh, absolutely, I add all kinds of spices to
she's
that. And
all about spices, people. Let me tell you, we've gone through an Asian market together. She's all about spices.
the synergy of spices have such a beautiful antioxidant profile. You can do so much beautiful things for your cells.
Yeah.
And really, when you're thinking about fasting, this is kind of the last thing is, as we wrap up, is aligning fasting with your wellness goals, not with what society tells you to do, not with what a textbook, oh, I saw this TikTok reel, I should probably do this. Oh, I read this article, I should be fasting because this is how people lose weight. I think if you want to approach weight loss, and I really should have put weight release. I don't, when we lose something, we look for it again. So I like to release things. So with weight release that is meant to be gone, is really for like the insulin sensitive eating, eating fiber first, protein forward feasting. Again, you have to nourish well in order to fast well. So nourishing well is training your body to be able to be ready for a fast, getting your adrenals ready, and nourishing it appropriately. So then when you go into intermittent fasting, which there's several different types, but we didn't get into that. I was wanting to give you a high level, this is how to approach fasting first. We also, if you're fasting, if your goal is hormone balance, detox pathways, we have got to open up those puppies. So that's where your leafy greens, your sulfur containing foods, hydration, all sleeping, all of that's going to be super important. And if your adrenals are off, that means that you don't have a hormone balance, so that your cortisol is off, and that's the one you start with first.
Because
If
so the adrenals are kind of the high schoolers that is
Mhm.
at the junior high.
There you
High
go.
schooler is going to push around everybody else.
I like it.
So yeah, and
Yep.
I used to call the adrenals the mean girls on the block, but I think with your illustration of the liver, the gallbladder, and the intestines, they are quite the clique. But the
They are.
adrenals will push around everything else, and the adrenals push around your thyroid and your reproductive hormones. So it's
Right.
adrenals really push a lot. But before we have those adrenals, we have to make sure that that liver is open, the
Yes.
intestines are working, and the gallbladder is emptying completely. That's what
Yes.
snacking screws you up with. You get
Yes.
all
Yes.
these
Yes.
little tiny snacks and your gallbladder's not fully releasing. That's where gallstones come from a lot of times.
And you do need that time in between meals too. I think
Mhm.
we went, especially when you're training. I've gone to there's several times during the month where I will do one meal a day. But I've been doing this for 20 some years and have trained my body in that way. I would never start off that way.
Mhm.
So how you begin is super important. And remember, small incremental goals are what are going to get you that sustainable shift. Really muscle preservation. I really want to make sure you guys want to touch on this, because a lot of times when we go into long periods of fasting, there's all of these tools, pharmaceutical tools right now that are wasting people's muscle away because they want the quick fix of the fat loss. At what cost? So muscle preservation can happen with fasting. It's just you made sure that you prioritize good quality protein on your nourishing days. We got to have those feasting days. And then the last thing, I don't want to not talk about fasting with not talking about the spiritual component. There is a purpose, and that spiritual fasting purposes can come to light, and that is can be a very good reset too. So it that becomes more of your spiritual and emotional nutrition. So when you have that spiritual and emotional nutrition component, you will then have a better physical presentation because they all align.
Right.
So I
Absolutely.
want you to think of fasting as a reset window, not as a restriction. It's a chance to let the body repair from a physical, emotional, and spiritual aspect instead of constantly processing. So you can utilize fasting, or like I call it, time-specific eating, strategic calorie placement, as a way to really sit in, listen to what your body is really trying to tell you. There's some beautiful conversations that happen in the rest and digest. So
Absolutely. And with that, Sarah, I'd love for you to put in the chat your contact information. I will be sharing that as well, my contact information. So if somebody wants to work with either of us, but I'm going to share this one thing. I'm sending you out on the chat. It is a Why Fasting Matters and How to Start. Christy Wright did this webinar or podcast. It's a two-part podcast on spiritual fasting and how they do it as a church. And so they are not doing the fasting as in no calorie intake. You can
right.
do that, but they do it as a liquid for the first week, and then the second week it's liquid in one meal a day kind of thing. But the spiritual reasons for fasting, and that's something to pray about. That's something you ask the Lord about in direction for time. You set a time frame. You don't just kind of wing it and go, oh, I'm not going to eat for a few days. And then you've got all kinds of health that breaks loose because of that with your adrenals and your weight and all of that kind of thing. But
Yeah, and there are so many different ways to go about it. Again, I think, I love like a lot of it, like the Daniel fast is one that a lot of churches do too. So there is a really great I mean, like you said, we could probably do 5 webinars on this and break down every single piece of fasting. But I think it's really important to have that solid foundation on what fasting is, from a physical perspective, and then the whole spiritual. This is a great podcast to understand that spiritual piece of it, because you we do make food as an idol sometimes, and that's where it becomes the destruction rather than the repair and the nourishment that it was meant to be. So
Right. And that's what I always want to make sure that people are aware of. You know, we don't, Sarah and I, and none of the practitioners that I work with and trust and believe in ever do a one size fits all for people. We need
nope.
to look at what your body's needs are, what your situation is. You know, I'm an empty nester at this point. I don't have a bunch of little children running around my feet like Sarah did for a long time. She has one left that is graduating this next week,
Oh.
and she's moving into a new phase. Actually, there was on Christy Wright's podcast I listened to yesterday, you need to go to the Levi Lesko one. Oh
Mm,
my gosh.
so
Phases
good.
in life. It was beautiful. You're gonna love it. But any questions that you guys have for us, please put them in there. We have 5 minutes maybe?
Yeah.
Okay, because I've got a client in just a few minutes, but if we didn't give you a lot of time, I kept jumping in. Sorry, Sarah.
All good. No, great stuff.
I always want to make sure things are clear and that there isn't a miscommunication, because that is to me a scarier concept. But if you have any questions, put them in the chat. If you're done with us for the day, please go. But I will be emailing everybody with the link for the webinar, and it'll be on YouTube so you can share it with your friends. But I appreciate so much with you guys being here, Sarah, for going through and explaining kind of your perspective on the feasting rather than a limitation in the way that we're looking at things. I think it's an opportunity for our bodies to do some pretty amazing things.
Yes, I agree. And the way that it was intended, I think understanding that there were mechanisms put in place and we run interference. So going back to that simplistic component of what is the rhythm that God had intended for food to fulfill.
Yes, absolutely.
Love it.
Thank you
Thank you
guys
so
for being on the
much.
call. We appreciate you. And be on the lookout for that email, follow-up email. Have an amazing day, people.
Thanks, ladies.
Take care.